Mutilated animals. This is a bit gory and hard to stomach, but nonetheless, it should be shared. About 2.5 years ago, at the start of the summer, I was walking along the back roads that connect the town I grew up in to the town I was currently living in. I didn't have a car at the time, and my ride fell through, but it wasn't a worry to me. I enjoyed looking at the birds and plants. At that time, I was just beginning to study wildlife tracks and native plants in the area, so I was keen to keep an eye on my surroundings. About 7 miles into my 11-mile journey, I start getting a funny feeling. I am very comfortable in the woods, even more so when I am alone. I feel clear-headed, less distracted, and focused on my surroundings, so I took notice when I felt eyes on me. I slowed my pace and shortened my steps. I'm more of a fighter than a flighter. I rounded the oncoming corner with care, only to find the bodies of 2 animals. One was skinned and looked rather large. I thought possibly dog or large feline, but couldn't tell, as its face and paws were torn off and mutilated. The other body was of a black cat, intact, but his eyes gouged out. They lay in a perfectly yin-yang shape at the base of an evergreen. Immediately, I whipped out my phone to document the horror, and to my despair, the battery was almost depleted. I took a few photos I could, and watched my phone shut down. The feeling of terror did not leave me. Nothing seemed safe. I was uncomfortable for the first time in the forest I grew up in. Up. Much further on the path, just around the corner, was a mess of plastic and other bits of man-made material. I didn't have to look much further to find a mass grave of over 50 mutilated dead ducks. I also found a bag of what I believed to be intestines. Needless to say, I hauled ass out of there. Once my phone was charged, I sent the photos alone to a friend who called police, who said, "Yep, that happens a lot up there. Has for years." And that's it. Crazy old lady jumps out of her car. Okay, so this has literally just happened this morning. I was driving my daughter to school, and we had to take some country lanes to get there. There is a particular part that goes very narrow. Only one car go down at a time, but it opens out after a few yards into a small village. I was driving through this part with 4 other vehicles behind me, one being a huge truck, and this older lady, in her late 60s, early 70s I'd say, comes speeding up in front of me. We both stop and she began shouting at me to reverse, to which I point behind me to the other vehicles to show that I couldn't go back. She continued to scream and flip me off for another minute. She then opened her car door and began getting out, so I hit the auto lock button to lock all my doors. She stood in front of my car and totally lost her shit. She was screaming and throwing her arms around, screaming for me to reverse, which I again tried to tell her I couldn't, pointing to the vehicles behind me. She moved to get into her car, then changed her mind, and then stormed around to my door, where she started forcefully tugging on the door handle and banging like crazy on my window. She had lost it. She was shouting, holding her fist up at me, and telling me I can't fucking drive and to fucking get out. Also shouting other stuff that I couldn't hear, because I began loudly warning her not to touch my car and to back off, because she was scaring my child. I could see others getting out of their vehicles behind me, looking concerned. I told her I had her number plate and her actions on my dash cam. She backed off and got back into her car. She began reversing quickly, but stopped and charged forward towards my car at full speed. Obviously to say I crapped myself, because I thought she was going to ram me head on. I should add that she had a child in her car with her as well, as did I. She slammed on her brakes, then reversed again to the entrance of the lane, a few meters down. I quickly drove past, but could see she was still screaming and flipping me off. So I sped off, because I didn't want to frighten my daughter any more than she already was. I hate to think what this woman would have done to me if I hadn't locked my doors. I hope never to meet this crazy bitch again. She looked a lot like the woman in the film, The Visit. Update. Saw her again this morning speeding around the corner in the lanes. Just about had time to pull in to the side, scuffed my one tire slightly, but it was slow, creepy, nasty stare she gave me as she went past me that gave me the chills. I just gave her a nice bright smile. Creepy Forrest Gump. I apologize to all you Redditors out there for my fourth story on here now. I just love sharing all my encounters with creeps on here. I have a lot, because like I said, I think I might be a creep magnet. I apologize again. I will stop posting and remove if need be. This is just a story that will stick in my mind forever. It's not necessarily frightening, but it has a lot of what ifs, and I wanted to share with all you let's not meet lurkers out there. So, I was almost 20 years old at this time, and it was about late December. My boyfriend and I were in a long-distance relationship at the time, and I was taking the train down to southern Illinois to visit him to celebrate New Year's. I took the Chicago train to Carbondale all by myself, and it was my first time ever traveling alone. The train I took was very early, so I had to get up at about 4 to 5 a.m. to go get ready. As a result, I was very tired and slept for a lot of the trip. The train wasn't too crowded. I had my own 2 seats to stretch out in and sleep. There was one guy across from me and 1 seat up. He was very clean-shaven, hair kinda slicked back, and looked exactly like Tom Hanks in Forrest Gump. He kept looking over at me, but he wasn't bothering me, so I ignored him and drifted off. I awoke an hour or so later at him still, staring at me. I looked around and realized we were almost halfway there. He suddenly spoke to me. He sounded exactly like Forrest Gump too, I shit you not, offering me his blanket and telling me I looked cold. I at first told him I was fine, even though I was a bit cold, but he insisted, so I accepted. He took the blanket off his lap and gave it to me. I wrapped it around me, even though I felt kind of strange, and lay down, my head near the aisle this time, and looking towards the window, and drifted off again. I awoke sometime later to a hand thrusting an AM track cup into my face and sat up immediately. He smiled to me this creepy, giddy smile and asked me if I'd like some hot chocolate. I declined politely, but he insisted, saying, "Come on, are you sure? I can't drink too." He was very nice, but for some reason that comment really struck me as odd and set alarm bells in my head. If he couldn't drink too, then why did he get to? My mind immediately went to, this guy drug this hot chocolate and wants me to drink it. He kept offering it to me until I finally accepted. I felt guilty since he was so nice, but I couldn't help but being extremely suspicious. I decided that I'd pretend to drink it just to appease the guy and not be rude, but I'd be safe just in case my weird gut feeling was right. I'd always been taught to never accept a drink from a stranger, so I put on an award-winning performance of pretending to sip the drink every so often, and even pretend to swallow once in a while. All the while he sat across from me, glancing over, furrowing his brow. Maybe it was my imagination or anxiety taking over, but it honestly seemed like he was looking at me with an almost puzzled expression on his face. And I couldn't help but wonder whether he was thinking, why hasn't she passed out yet? I just looked out the window, hoping that my stop would get there quickly, so I could just leave. I glance over at him again, and he's still watching me, but this time, he gets up and sits right next to me. He smells strongly of cologne, and even though he seems normal, he just kinda makes me uncomfortable. He asks me my name and where I live, and if I've been in the city before, and of course I lied through my teeth, giving him a fake name and city, that I've been to southern Illinois a bunch of times because I was visiting family. He tells me he lives down here, and that he's getting off at the last stop and driving to Missouri to work on the Mississippi River for 4 months, and that no one will find him out there. That last comment made my hair stand on end, because that's the perfect serial killer job. Rape me and kill me and leave me in a field, and yet they'll disappear on a boat on a river for months. No way, dude, no thank you, not today. We chat for a little bit more before he smiles this deranged smile at me and tells me very pointedly to make sure I finish my hot chocolate, and then goes back to his seat. I turned towards the window until my stop came. though I could feel him watching me, and then hurried off the train, taking my hot chocolate with me to throw it out in the safety of my boyfriend's house. Life is like a cup of hot chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. So creepy Forrest Gump guy on the train who might have been trying to drug me. Let's not meet. They call him Creepy Freddy. This happened very recently and is still fresh in my memory still. My name is Simone. No, not Simon, I'm a girl, and I'm 20 years old. I live on the countryside, in an idyllic village where half the houses are vacation homes. Not much happen here, but if you enjoy nature, it's great. I'm an outdoorsy kinds of woman. My favorite element being water. I do kayaking, diving, swimming, and anything else water-related I can get my hands on. I was on my way home from my night shift. I got this job just for the summer at a halfway house. It's a home for 8 recovering addicts, and there has to always be 2 people working there at night too, just in case. It's usually very calm. We play cards, watch TV, cook, etc. Easy money. So back on topic, I was driving home, as I always do. I stopped at a little secluded lake for a swim. I can never resist a good swim, and always got a bikini in the car. This lake isn't very large, but crystal clear and surrounded by a beautiful forest area. You would never know it was there if no one told you about it. The little road that leads down to the beach is narrow and well hidden. As a result, there's almost never anyone there apart from the occasional dog walker. I'd only just started to swim out in the lake when I felt that my car key, that I keep tied on a piece of string and tied around my ankle, didn't feel tight enough, and I was afraid it would slip out of my ankle and be lost. So instead of swimming straight out into the lake, I quickly made my way around the little rocky part of a headland. Not sure that word correctly describes it. If the lake is slightly L-shaped, I was in the angle and could see through to the beach and the car. As I fastened the string better, I look up towards my car. I'm now in a hidden spot, not far from the beach and the car, but hidden behind a corner so I can see the car from the side. I didn't see him at first, and I had to squint to make sure it wasn't an illusion, a trick of my imagination, but no. Squatting behind my SUV was a man. A man in a bright yellowy hoodie that I recognized. I didn't see his face, of course, and it was too far away to actually see who it was anyways, but I recognized the hoodie. It was Creepy Freddy. He was only 17 years old, but very unstable, and hadn't returned from his visit to his parents the day before. We called the police, of course, but since he usually turned up on his own after a few days of freedom and drugs, the police often advised us to wait and see. He had earned his nickname, Creepy Freddy, after assaulting a girl with a scythe for no reason, other than the fact that he felt she was too beautiful. She wasn't badly injured, but still, creepy indeed. He has had a long history of drug-induced violent outbursts, and even if he was nice enough when sober, he was a nightmare when he wasn't. I thought about trying to get up, leave the car, and try and walk away towards the main road, but what if he spotted me and ran after me? I had no idea if he was fit or not, and I was in barefoot and my orange bikini would be easy to spot. I decided against it. The risk of enduring up to face with a probably drugged, violent, and possibly armed Freddy was too big of a risk. I considered my options and realized there was only one: to swim across the lake and reach the little cluster of vacation cottages that occupy the opposite beach. So, as quietly as I could, I started to swim. The swim took me over 90 minutes, and I kept turning around to see if I was being followed. I reached the other beach, exhausted and cold. I walked up the sandy beach as a young mom and her kid spotted me. I explained the situation, and she phoned the police and fed me scones and coffee and the best waffles I ever had. Police arrived to find Freddy gone, and all 4 of my tires slashed. I resigned from my job at the halfway house, and I hope we never meet again. Freddy is, as far as I know, still not found. You ordered a male escort? This happened about 2 years ago when I was 16 at my best friend's flat. It was around midnight, and both of us were in her kitchen dancing around and being silly in short shorts and bikini tops. Her mom was passed out on the sofa at the other end of the flat, bearing in mind she lives on the ground floor. After a few minutes, we noticed an old car slowly driving past the window. We thought nothing of it really, until we saw it come back and stop right outside. We thought maybe it was one of the neighbors, but a bit odd, as they were all quite old, and probably wouldn't be driving that time of night. We just continued with what we were doing when her door buzzer went off. My best friend, without thinking, pressed a button to open the main door, not even asking who it was. When she opened her door, a tall, large, bald man, dressed in an old paint-splattered clothes, walks up to us at the door. "You ordered a male escort?" he said. Me and my best friend looked at each other with confusion, and I said that no, we didn't order anyone. You have the wrong house. He kept edging his way closer into our doorway and said, "No, you definitely told me this address." We got really freaked out and asked him to leave, but he proceeded to tell us he's coming in and made his way into the doorway. Just as he did, my friend's mom comes to the door and asked who he is. He backs right up from the door and starts stuttering, saying he got called to this address. She asked him what is this address then, and he doesn't have a clue, and just makes some street up while he's stuttering, trying to think of somewhere. He apologizes and then leaves. Me and my best friend are pretty shaken up, but decide it's a good idea not to prance around late at night, not wearing a lot of clothing. So, creepy escort man, let's not meet. How my grandfather was almost murdered. This is a story my dad told me not too long ago about my grandpa and how he came extremely close to being murdered. My grandpa used to be a pastor at a local church, and one night, when he was driving home from a service and was still wearing his robes and collar, he saw a hitchhiker at the side of the road and decided to pull over and pick him up, like he usually would when he saw a hitchhiker. He pulled over and the man got in. The man was wearing overalls and was also carrying an old metal lunchbox with him. My grandpa assumed that he was a construction worker who did not have a ride home after a shift. My grandpa and him started to converse and eventually arrived at the man's destination. The man got out and thanked my grandpa for the ride. A few days later, my grandpa was talking to his neighbor. At one point in the conversation, she brought up a story she had seen on the news about a man who would get rides from people by hitchhiking. Then, when he would reach his destination, he would take a knife out of an old metal lunchbox and kill the person driving. My grandpa almost fainted after hearing this news. He assumed the only reason he was alive and talking to her at the time was because of the robes and the collar he was wearing. Crazy Chris. 2 years ago, I attended college to study hair and beauty therapy. I was 18 years old at the time. Our college campus, there was a place where people with disabilities would go learn. There was someone who was part of this group called Chris. People would call him Crazy Chris. Pretty mean, I know. He was a black male around 19 years old. He dressed kinda trampy and smelt of urine. I would see him a lot loitering in the hallways, talking to himself and pacing up and down. People would make fun of him and go and have a conversation with him just to see what crazy stuff he said to them. The few times I had spoken to him, I came away feeling a little frightened because he would say things randomly in the conversation like, "Rape her, punch her in the face, you fucking little slut." To my knowledge, he didn't have Tourette's. I was told a whole number of different stories about why he was the way he was, such as he has this dissociative identity disorder, psychopath, he was sexually abused, one person even told me he was possessed. He became a bit of a nuisance to all the girls in the hair and beauty classes. It's like he would get obsessions with a new girl every week. In our class, Where we did practical, there was a huge glass window, so everyone could look in on what you were doing. The college tried to make the hair and beauty classes like a beauty shop too. You could see him waiting in the hall outside every day, without fail. I was pretty stupid in my year at college, and I was always doing things which were pretty ridiculous. On one particular day, I got my finger caught in a radiator in the hallway near my hair and beauty class. I was stuck there for around an hour as I waited for the janitor to come from off campus to free my finger from this radiator. Everyone had gone into the class, and I was alone in this hallway, and you can probably guess who turns up. Crazy Chris. He was laughing at me and pacing around in a really crazy way and muttering things under his breath. I wasn't actually scared at all. I thought to myself, if he says anything to me, I'm gonna fucking blow up in his face. Because I was really pissed off that I'm standing here with my finger stuck in a radiator, and I've been for half an hour already. He did say something to me, and I can't quite remember what he said, but my reply was not too nice. I basically said back to him, or rather shouted back to him, that he needed to stop stalking everyone in my class, and that if he thinks doing this is going to get him anywhere, that he must be more fucked up than I thought. I was really going for it. I called him the C word and everything like that. He just stood there and didn't say a word to me. And finally, the janitor turned up and freed me. Chris waited outside my class. He followed girls around college and home. One girl in my class had said how he follows her home, telling her he's going to rape her and drag her down an alleyway. She had gone to the head of the college, and she had informed the girl that Chris was harmless and it's part of his condition, and that he's been assessed by a psychiatrist, and does she think they would actually let him go into the college if he was actually going to do all of these things? He just kind of became background noise, I guess. It was like, oh, crazy Chris is following me out of college again, telling me he's going to hit me, he's going to rape me. He's not, so he can carry on now. One day he followed me. He was on a push bike and I was walking. This was only the second time he had. I was heading to work straight after college. I worked as a waitress. He was riding right behind me, very slowly, not saying anything. I kept glancing behind me, and every time I did, he would mutter something under his breath, and I would say, "What?" So I turned around and actually started walking backwards, trying to talk to him. I tried to befriend him or tried to find some common ground with him. I was saying to him, "Chris, why are you following me? Like, if you need a friend, then I'll be your friend. You don't have to follow me." He didn't really say much back to me and mumbled, so I turned back around. I was near my workplace, and as he went past me, he slapped me very hard on the back of the head and rode down the road laughing uncontrollably. I just thought that's the last time I'll ever try to be nice to you. It got a little weird after this. On the odd days, maybe twice a week, he would be waiting for me outside the back of my work when I finished, and he would follow me to my bus stop, not saying anything to me. Sometimes he would say the odd thing to such as, "Pull her hair, fuck her," and that was it. I didn't even acknowledge his existence. I went to my college and spoke to my head of year. They must have had words with him, because after this, he didn't loiter outside the hair and beauty part of the college. He didn't follow girls home, and he stopped waiting for me outside my work. 2 weeks after this happened, I was at work, and he came into my work and ordered some food. I worked in a diner, so it wasn't too out of the ordinary. I thought that he had forgotten about me and that he was just hungry, so he had some food. He left. After I finished my shift, I did see him, but he wasn't following me. He was just sitting on the opposite side of the street where my bus stop was, on his bike just looking at me. The next day, the same thing happened. He came in for food. I didn't notice him leave or finish his food or anything like that. This time as it was pretty busy in the diner. Unfortunately, my manager found Chris in the staff toilets just before closing time. He must have been in there for a good 2 hours or so. I refused to go in there or look, as what she found was Chris had slit his wrist. He wasn't dead or unconscious. He was wide awake, pacing around the bathroom with no pants or underwear on, and just a t-shirt on. He had smeared his blood and some of his shit all on the white bathroom tiles. She phoned the police and the ambulance, and Chris was sectioned. My boss had to redecorate the whole bathroom, as she couldn't get the stains of shit and blood out of the grouting between the tiles. I never heard or seen anything to do with Chris after this incident. He never came back to college, and I have no idea where he went or what happened to him. Now that I'm a little older, I actually feel nothing but empathy towards him, like it wasn't his fault he was messed up. And I really do hope that, despite his mental health problems, he managed to find some happiness. I could have been an orphan. I could have been dead. When I was 2 years old, my mother, 20 at the time, was already a single parent. My parents had split the year before. At the time, we lived with another student from the nursing program my mother was attending. The roommate, Emily, was very smart. My mom had to study hard for her grades, but Emily was one of those people who could read a passage once and remember it. One Thursday night, Emily was trying to convince Mom to go drinking with her, but Mom had a bunch of studying to do. Still, she didn't want to spend the nights alone in the house, so she decided to go spend the night with my grandparents. The next day, Emily wasn't in class. When Mom got home, Emily's car wasn't there, but Mom didn't think much of it until she found Emily's purse. When Mom found it, she knew something was wrong. She decided to call the pharmacy where Emily worked as an assistant, and they told Mom that she hadn't showed up to work, and also told her that she was fired. Mom decided to call her boyfriend at the time, who later became my stepfather, and he came over to have a look. When he found a broken window in the bathroom, he told Mom to call the police. The police arrived pretty quickly and searched Emily's room. They pulled back the covers on her bed. Her sheets were soaked with blood. That's when Mom realized that Emily was dead. The police found her abandoned car out on a country road. Emily's body was found in a field nearby. She'd been raped and stabbed to death. Mom was, for good reason, terrified, and decided to move back in with my grandparents. Eventually, the police found the man who murdered Emily. As it turned out, he didn't even get his intended target that night. No, he'd been watching my mom for some time. He had even posed as a potential buyer of the house Mom and Emily were renting, and toured it with a real estate agent. In court, he tried to get this crazy letter that was supposed to be from my mom admitted as evidence. Anyways, the man got life in prison, and Mom is supposed to be notified whenever he's released. She no longer lives in fear. This happened in 1985. I can't help but wonder what would have happened to me if she decided to stay home. Would I still be alive? Would I have grown up without a mother? I ache when I think about the terror Emily must have experienced. But at the same time, I'm glad it wasn't us, and I feel a little guilty about that.